Nari pressed her face against the cold metal wall of the escape pod and tried not to think about dying. The air tasted stale and bitter. Each breath felt heavier than the last. The small screen above her head showed red warnings in the Veltharian language. Life support failing. Oxygen running low. Hull breach detected. She had been drifting in space for 3 days now. 3 days since her own people threw her away like garbage. The memory still burned in her mind. Standing in the great crystal chamber, before the Council of Elders. Her cousin Hana pointing at her with one sharp finger, the false evidence glowing on the viewing crystals. Pictures of the sacred gardens withered and black. Pictures that Hana had created with lies and poison. Nari of the Bright Waters clan has betrayed us all, Hana had said. Her voice was smooth and cold. She has poisoned our most holy place. She has killed the crystal trees that took 1,000 years to grow. Nari had tried to speak. She had tried to tell them the truth. That she had discovered the gardens were not sacred at all. That they were work camps where slave species died in the crystal mines. That the beautiful singing crystals they worshipped were made from the bones of dead prisoners, but no one listened. Her own mother turned away from her. Her father would not meet her eyes. Her younger brother Taeyang wore the uniform of the fleet and spoke the words that sealed her fate. For crimes against the sacred crystal gardens, for betraying the trust of our people, for bringing shame to the Brightwaters clan, we banish you to the void. May the stars judge you as we cannot. They gave her an old escape pod. Barely enough food for a week. Barely enough air for 5 days. They expected her to die alone in the darkness between worlds. It was meant to be a clean death. A quiet death. A death that would let the family keep their honor. Nari laughed, but the sound came out as a sob. Honor. What honor was there in lies? What honor was there in slavery and murder? The pod shook as it hit something. Probably space debris. The hull was already cracked in 2 places. Another hit like that, and she would be breathing vacuum instead of recycled air. She closed her eyes and let her mind drift. The crystal implant behind her ear grew warm as her telepathic abilities reached out into space. It was habit more than hope. Veltharian rescue ships would not come for her. But maybe she could touch another mind before she died. Maybe she could send one last message into the void. Her mental voice echoed into empty space. Is anyone there? Please. Someone help me. Nothing answered. Just the cold silence of infinite space and distant stars. The pod shuddered again. This time harder. Nari opened her eyes and looked at the warning lights. They were blinking faster now. The hull breach was getting bigger. She had maybe an hour left before the pod broke apart completely. She thought about her childhood, running through the crystal forests of her home world, swimming in the bright blue lakes that gave her clan its name, learning to sing the crystal songs that made the gardens grow. Back then, she believed in the beauty of her people. She believed in their wisdom and their justice. That was before she learned the truth, before she discovered that the beautiful crystal songs were actually screams of pain from dying slaves, before she found the hidden tunnels under the gardens where alien prisoners worked until they collapsed, before she tried to free them and got caught by the guards. The pod's computer spoke in a flat, mechanical voice. Warning. Life support failure. In 47 minutes, warning. Hull integrity at 12%. Nari laughed again. This time it was not a sob. At least she would die knowing the truth. At least she had tried to do the right thing, even if it cost her everything. Something beeped on the control panel. Nari frowned and looked at the screen. There was a new signal. A ship was approaching. Her heart jumped with sudden hope. Then, fell just as quickly. It was probably a Veltharian patrol ship coming to make sure she was really dead, but the signal pattern was wrong. It was not the sharp, regular pulse of Veltharian technology. This signal was softer, more complex, almost like music. The pod shook as something attached to its hull. Nari heard the sound of cutting tools working on the outer door. Someone was trying to get inside. Fear and hope fought in her chest. Who would bother to rescue a banished criminal? And what would they want from her? The outer door opened with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Nari smelled something strange. Clean air with a hint of something organic. Plants, maybe, or flowers. Nothing like the sterile, processed air of Veltharian ships. Heavy footsteps clanked on the metal floor of the airlock. Then the inner door opened and Nari saw something she had never seen before. A human. She knew about humans, of course. Her people's databases mentioned them as a young species from a small world on the edge of known space, barely out of their own solar system. Too primitive to be worth conquering, too weak to be worth enslaving. The Veltharian Empire had marked them as harmless and ignored them. But this human did not look harmless. He was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a heavy work suit covered in tool belts and patches. His skin was darker than any Veltharian's, and his hair was black with streaks of silver. His eyes were brown and warm, not the cold crystal blue of her people. He held up his hands to show he had no weapons. When he spoke, his voice was deep and gentle. "Easy there. We picked up your distress signal. Are you hurt?" Nari stared at him. She understood the words because her crystal implant translated them automatically. But she could not understand why he was here. Why he cared if she was hurt. Her own people had thrown her away to die, but this stranger had come to help her. You came for me?" she whispered. The human smiled. It was the first kind smile anyone had given her in months. "Of course we came. Nobody should die alone out here." He stepped closer and offered her his hand. "Come on, let's get you somewhere safe. My name is Minho. What's yours?" Nari looked at his outstretched hand. It was scarred and weathered from hard work, but steady and strong. She had never touched an alien before. Her people taught that other species were dirty and contaminated. But Minho's hand looked clean and honest. It looked like salvation. She reached out and took it. Nari followed Minho through the airlock and into his ship. Her legs shook with each step. 3 days in the cramped escape pod had left her weak and dizzy. The human noticed her struggle and slowed his pace. "Take your time," he said. "The gravity might feel different from what you're used to." Different was an understatement. Everything about this ship felt wrong to Nari's senses. The walls were painted in warm colors instead of cold crystal white. Soft music played from hidden speakers. Plants grew in small pots along the corridors. Real plants, not the crystal formations her people preferred. The strangest thing was the smell. It smelled like life. Like growing things and cooking food and people who lived and worked together. Veltharian ships smelled like nothing at all, clean and empty and sterile. They entered what looked like a medical bay. A human female was waiting for them. She had short black hair and gentle eyes behind small glasses. She wore a white coat over practical clothes. "This is Sora," Minho said. "She's our doctor. She'll make sure you're okay." Nari stepped back. In her world, doctors were dangerous. They experimented on prisoners. They decided who lived and who died. They served the state, not the patient. "I don't need a doctor," she said quickly. Sora raised her hands the same way Minho had done. "I just want to check if you're hurt. You don't have to let me touch you if you don't want to." This confused Nari. A doctor asking permission? A doctor caring about what she wanted? It made no sense. "Why?" Nari asked. "Why what? Why do you care if I want it or not? I'm your prisoner now. You can do whatever you want with me." Sora and Minho looked at each other. Something passed between them that Nari's crystal implant could not translate. Not words, but understanding. The kind of silent communication that happened between people who knew each other well. "You're not our prisoner," Minho said. "You're our guest. There's a difference." "Now what difference?" "A prisoner has no choice. A guest can leave whenever they want." Nari stared at him. "You would let me leave?" "If that's what you wanted, yes. But right now you don't have anywhere to go. So why don't you stay for a while? Let us help you get back on your feet." This was impossible. No species was this generous to strangers. There had to be a trick, a trap. Something they wanted from her. "What do you want from me?" she asked. Minho looked genuinely confused. "Nothing, we just want to help." "Nobody helps for nothing. What's the price?" There is no price. Nari's crystal implant grew warm as her telepathic abilities reached out automatically. She tried to read Minho's mind, to find the lie hidden in his thoughts. But human minds felt different from Veltharian ones. Warmer, more chaotic, harder to read clearly. What she found in his mind shocked her. He was telling the truth. He really did want to help her with no payment expected. The concept was so alien to her that she almost couldn't process it. "I don't understand," she whispered. Sora stepped forward slowly. "Maybe we can start with something simple. Are you hungry?" Nari's stomach answered before she could. It had been empty for 2 days. She nodded. "Good. Let me just check you over first. Make sure you're not injured. Then we'll get you some food." The medical examination was unlike anything Nari had experienced. Sora explained everything she was doing. She asked permission before each test. She was gentle and careful. When Nari flinched at a bright light, Sora immediately dimmed it and apologized. "Your people are very different from ours," Sora said as she worked. "I'm having to guess about your biology. If something hurts or feels wrong, please tell me." "You don't know about Veltharians? We've never met any before. You're our first contact with your species." This was another shock. First contact was supposed to be a formal process. Diplomats and generals and careful negotiations, not a rescue in space by accident. "Are you going to report this to your government?" Nari asked. Minho laughed. "What government? We're independent salvagers. We go where we want and help who we want. No government controls you?" "Earth has a government, sure, but space is big. Out here, we pretty much govern ourselves." The idea of people governing themselves seemed impossible to Nari. In the Veltharian Empire, everything was controlled from the top down. Every citizen had a place and a purpose assigned by their betters. Freedom was just another word for chaos. Sora finished her examination. "You're dehydrated and malnourished, but otherwise healthy. Some rest and good food should fix you right up." She led Nari to a small room with a bed, a desk, and a window that looked out at the stars. "This is yours for as long as you need it." "Mine? Your private space. Nobody will come in without your permission." Nari sat on the bed. It was soft and comfortable. Nothing like the hard sleeping platforms on Veltharian ships. "I still don't understand why you're doing this." "Because it's right," Minho said simply. "Because you needed help and we could give it." A few minutes later, a new human arrived with food. This one was female, younger than the others, with long black hair tied back in a practical bun. She carried a tray that smelled incredible. "I'm G1, she said with a bright smile. "I'm the engineer. I also do most of the cooking around here." She set the tray down on the desk. There was soup that steamed and smelled like herbs, bread that was still warm, fruit that looked fresh and sweet. More food than Nari had seen in weeks. "I wasn't sure what you could eat," G1 said. "So I kept it simple. If any of this makes you sick, let me know and I'll try something else." "You cooked this just for me?" "Of course, you're family now." Family. The word hit Nari like a physical blow. She had lost her family when they banished her. She thought she would never have one again. "I'm not your family," she said quietly. "I'm not even your species." G1 shrugged. "So? Family isn't about blood or DNA. It's about people who care about each other." After G1 left, Nari ate slowly. The food was better than anything she had tasted in her life. Each bite seemed to bring strength back to her body and warmth to her heart. She looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there was her home world, the place that had rejected her, the people who had thrown her away. But here, in this strange ship with these impossible humans, she felt something she had never felt before. She felt wanted. 2 weeks had passed since Nari joined the crew of Dawn's Promise. She was stronger now, her body recovering from the ordeal in the escape pod, but her mind was still reeling from everything she had learned about humans. She stood in the ship's small library, reading from their historical databases. What she found there changed everything she thought she knew about intelligence and civilization. Humans had once been primitive, violent, They had fought wars that nearly destroyed their entire planet. They had poisoned their own air and water. They had built weapons that could kill millions of people in minutes. But then something incredible happened. They chose to change. Finding anything interesting? Minho asked from behind her. Nari turned around. The human captain carried 2 cups of the hot brown liquid they called coffee. He offered one to her. She had learned to enjoy the bitter taste, and the way it made her feel more alert. "Your history," she said. "It's not what I expected." "What did you expect? My people taught us that humans were weak, that you had no real civilization, that you barely knew how to use tools." Minho sat down in the chair across from her. "Well, we did spend a lot of time hitting each other with rocks, but we got better." "How?" "We learned that working together was better than fighting each other. Took us a long time to figure that out, though. Nearly killed ourselves learning it." Nari looked back at the screen. It showed pictures of human cities that had been destroyed by war, then pictures of the same cities rebuilt, green and clean and beautiful. "You could have chosen to keep fighting," she said. "You could have become conquerors. You had the weapons for it." "We could have. Some of us wanted to. But most of us decided there had to be a better way. My people would not understand this. In our history, the strong always rule the weak. That's the natural order." Minho was quiet for a moment, then he asked, "What do you think of that natural order now?" Nari thought about the crystal gardens, about the slaves dying in the mines, about her own family throwing her away to protect their reputation. "I think maybe the natural order is wrong." That afternoon, Nari found herself in the engine room with Jiwon. The young engineer was working on some kind of navigation computer. Her hands moved quickly and confidently over the complex machinery. "Can I ask you something?" Nari said. "Sure." Jiwon didn't look up from her work. "What's on your mind? Why do you explore space?" "What do you mean?" "Your people could stay on your home world. You could be safe there. Why do you come out here to the dangerous places?" Jiwon stopped working and looked at her. "Because there's so much to see, so much to learn. Don't you want to know what's out there? The Veltharian Empire explores to find new worlds to conquer, new species to rule. What do humans look for? Friends, mostly." This answer surprised Nari. "Friends? Think about it. The universe is huge and mostly empty. But every once in a while you find someone interesting, someone worth talking to, like you. I'm an exile, a criminal by my people's laws. You're also brave enough to stand up for what's right, smart enough to see through lies, kind enough to care about people who aren't your own species. That makes you worth knowing." Nari felt something warm in her chest. Nobody had ever called her worth knowing before. Later that evening, she sat with Hyun in the ship's small observation deck. The pilot was young, maybe 25 in human years. He had an easy smile and quick hands. Right now he was showing her how to read star charts. "See that constellation there?" He pointed out the window. "We call it the Hunter. Different cultures see different things in the same stars." "What do Veltharians see when they look at stars?" Nari asked. "I don't know." "What do you see?" Nari looked out at the scattered points of light. "Territory, resources, things to be claimed and controlled." "That sounds lonely." "Lonely?" "Yeah. Like you're all alone in the universe trying to grab everything before someone else does. Isn't that what survival means?" Hyun shook his head. "Not to us. To us, survival means having people who care about you, people who will help you when you're in trouble. But what if they're not your species? What if they're aliens? So what? Caring isn't limited by biology." That night, Nari couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about everything the humans had told her, about their history of war and peace, about their exploration driven by curiosity instead of greed, about their ability to see friends instead of enemies when they met strangers. She thought about her own people. The Veltharian Empire stretched across dozens of star systems. They had conquered hundreds of species. They had built crystal cities that could be seen from orbit. They had technology that seemed like magic, but they had never learned the one thing that humans seem to understand naturally. They had never learned how to love without conditions. The next morning, Minho found her in the library again. This time she was reading about human art and music and poetry. Learning anything new? He asked. Humans create beauty just for the sake of beauty, she said, not for profit or status or political reasons, just because beautiful things make you happy. That's right. Veltharians only create things that serve a purpose, art that displays wealth, music that demonstrates skill, poetry that praises the empire. What kind of art would you create if you could make anything you wanted? The question caught Nari off guard. Nobody had ever asked her what she wanted to create. In her world, individual desires didn't matter. I don't know, she admitted. Well, you have time to figure it out. We're not going anywhere. Actually, there's something I need to tell you all. Something about my people that you should know. Minho's expression grew serious. What is it? The Veltharian Empire isn't just big. It's huge. We control this entire sector of space, and we don't just ignore other species like your databases say. We enslave them. She told him everything. About the crystal gardens that were really work camps. About the millions of aliens who died in the mines. About the lie that kept her people believing they were bringing order to chaos instead of bringing suffering to innocence. I tried to free some of the prisoners, she said. That's why I was really banished. Not for poisoning the gardens, but for trying to reveal the truth. Minho was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, "Thank you for telling me. Aren't you afraid? My people will eventually find this ship. When they do, they'll enslave you too." Maybe, but running from bullies never stopped them from being bullies. Sometimes you have to stand and fight. You can't fight the Empire, it's too big, too powerful. Minho smiled, and there was something fierce in his expression. You'd be surprised what humans can do when we're protecting our family. He stood up and put his hand on her shoulder. And you're our family now, Nari. That means we don't abandon you, ever. For the first time since her exile began, Nari felt truly safe. Not because she was hidden from her enemies, but because she had found people who would stand with her against them. She had found her home among the stars. The alarm sounded at exactly 800 hours ship time. Nari was in the kitchen helping Jiwan prepare breakfast when the red light started flashing. The sound was sharp and urgent, cutting through the normal, peaceful hum of the ship. Minho's voice came over the intercom. "All crew to the bridge, we have company." Nari's blood turned to ice. She knew that tone. She had heard it before in her nightmares. The calm, deadly certainty of a predator that had found its prey. They rushed to the bridge where Han was already at his station, hands flying over the controls. The main screen showed 3 massive ships approaching. Each one was 10 times the size of Dawn's Promise. Their hulls were made of black crystal that seemed to absorb light instead of reflecting it. Veltharian warships. "How long have they been following us?" Minho asked. "Unknown," Hyun replied. "They just dropped out of hyperspace. They're moving to surround us." Nari stared at the ships on the screen. She recognized the design. Heavy cruisers from the Imperial fleet. The kind of ships that conquered entire worlds. "They're here for me," she said quietly. "How can you be sure?" Sora asked. "Because that's my brother's flagship." The communication system crackled to life. A voice spoke in the Veltharian language, cold and formal. Nari's crystal implant translated automatically. "Human vessel, this is Admiral Taeyang of the Imperial Fleet. You are harboring a criminal of the Veltharian Empire. Surrender the exile Nari immediately and you will be allowed to depart unharmed." Minho looked at Nari. "What does he really mean?" "He means surrender me and he'll kill you quickly instead of slowly." "Why?" "Because you've seen me. You know I exist. The Empire can't let word spread that they banished their own people. It would make them look weak." Another transmission came through. This time the voice was softer, more personal. Taeyang was speaking directly to his sister. "Nari, I know you can hear me. Come home. Father is willing to forgive you if you return quietly. The family honor can still be saved." Nari closed her eyes. Even now, after everything, part of her wanted to believe him. Taeyang had been her favorite brother growing up. He had taught her to swim in the bright lakes of their home world. He had shared his toys and his secrets, but that was before he joined the fleet, before he learned to put duty above love. "What do you want to do?" Minho asked. Nari looked around the bridge, at the 4 humans who had become her family. Minho with his steady strength, Sora with her gentle hands and kind heart, Jiwon with her brilliant mind and infectious smile, Yeon with his quick wit and loyal spirit. "I want to protect you," she said. "All of you." "That's not what I asked. What do you want to do?" "I want to stay with you, but I can't let you die for me. That's our choice to make, not yours." Before Nari could argue, Jiwon spoke up from her engineering station. "Captain, I'm reading weapons powering up on all 3 ships. Whatever we're going to do, we need to decide fast." Minho activated the communication system. When he spoke, his voice was calm and clear. "Admiral Taeyang, this is Captain Minho of the Dawn's Promise. Nari is a member of our crew and under our protection. We will not surrender her to anyone." The reply came back immediately, sharp with anger. "You do not understand the situation, human. The exile is a criminal. She has committed crimes against the Empire. The only crime I see is what your Empire did to her. She's staying with us." "Then you have chosen death." The transmission cut off. On the screen, the Veltharian ships began to move into attack formation. "Well," Hyun said with forced cheerfulness, "this should be interesting." "Can we outrun them?" Minho asked. "Not in a straight chase. They're faster and they know where we're likely to go." "What about fighting?" Jiwon shook her head. "Our weapons are designed for salvage work, not combat. Their shields could probably stop our cutting lasers without even noticing." Nari felt despair settling over her like a cold blanket. These wonderful humans were going to die because of her, because they had been kind to a stranger, because they believed in doing what was right instead of what was safe. "Wait," she said suddenly. "Jiwon, you've been studying Veltharian technology, right? Using the crystal samples I gave you?" "Yeah, I've been trying to integrate some of your navigation crystals into our systems. Why? Have you installed any of them yet?" "Just one, in the navigation computer. It's improved our sensor range by about 30%. Nari turned to Hyun. "Do you trust me?" "With my life." "Then plot a course for the broken stars." Hyun's face went pale. "Nari, that's a navigation hazard. Ships don't go there." "Exactly. Veltharian ships don't go there because their navigation systems can't handle the gravitational anomalies. But with the crystal upgrade, we might be able to make it through." "Might?" "It's better odds than we have in a straight fight." Minho didn't hesitate. "Do it." The Dawn's Promise turned and accelerated toward a region of space that looked empty on most star charts. But Nari knew better. The broken stars were the remains of an ancient solar system that had collapsed in on itself. The gravitational fields were so chaotic that most ships' computers couldn't calculate a safe path through them. But Veltharian crystals were different. They could process multiple probability streams simultaneously. With Jiwon's modifications, their navigation system might be able to find a way through the maze. The Veltharian ships followed them, closing the distance slowly but steadily. Nari could see weapons charging on their hulls. Soon they would be in firing range. "Entering the hazard zone now," Jan reported. His hands were steady on the controls, but sweat beaded on his forehead. The ship began to shake as conflicting gravity fields pulled at its hull. On the screen, space itself seemed to twist and bend. Points of light stretched into lines, then snapped back to normal. "Navigation crystal is online," Jiwon called out. "I'm getting course corrections faster than I can implement them." "Stay with it," Minho said. "Nari, can you help?" Nari placed her hand on the navigation console. Her crystal implant grew warm as she connected with the modified system. Suddenly, she could feel the gravitational currents around them like a river flowing through space. "Left 10 degrees, she said. "There's a stable current running parallel to our course." The ship turned and the shaking lessened. Behind them, the first Veltharian ship tried to follow the same path. But without the crystal navigation system, it couldn't anticipate the sudden gravitational shifts. Nari watched on the rear display as her brother's flagship spun out of control. Its hull cracked under the stress of opposing gravity fields. Emergency lights flashed along its length. "They're pulling back," Sora reported. "All 3 ships are retreating to safe distance." "We made it," Hian breathed. But Nari knew this was just the beginning. Taeyang would call for reinforcements. The Empire would send more ships, bigger ships. Eventually they would find a way to follow her. "This won't stop them forever," she told Minho. "I know. But it gives us time to think, time to plan." "Plan what?" Minho looked at her with that fierce expression she had learned to recognize. The look he got when he had decided to fight instead of run. How to make sure this never happens to anyone else. 6 months had passed since the escape through the broken stars. The Dawn's promise now floated in the shadow of a rogue planet, far from any star system or trade route. It was the perfect place to hide, but Nari knew hiding was not enough. She stood in what had once been the ship's cargo bay. Now it served as a meeting room for the growing group of refugees they had rescued. 12 different species sat around a makeshift table, all of them former slaves of the Veltharian Empire. There was Kira, a small reptilian being whose people had been forced to work in crystal mines. Jin, a tall insectoid whose species had been used as living computers. Day, whose aquatic people had been kept in tanks and harvested for their natural oils. All of them had one thing in common. They had escaped from Veltharian slavery and found their way to the Dawn's promise after hearing rumors of humans who fought back against the Empire. "The supply convoy will pass through the Nexus system in 3 days," Nari was saying. "It carries food and medical supplies to 12 different work camps. If we can intercept it, we can free the prisoners and take the supplies to hidden colonies," Kira finished. Her voice was rough from years of breathing crystal dust. "It's dangerous," Jin added. His translated voice buzzed through the communication device. "The convoy will have escorts." "Everything we do is dangerous," Minho said from his seat at the head of the table. "But those people in the camps won't survive another winter without those supplies." Nari looked around the room at the faces of her new family. They had all lost their original homes, their original families. But together they had built something new, something the Empire had never seen before, a rebellion based on hope instead of hatred. "I have contacts in the Nexus system," Day said through his water-filled speaking apparatus. "My people who still pretend to serve the Empire. They can give us exact timing and routes. And I can disable their communication arrays," Jiwan added. "Give us a few minutes before they can call for help." The plan they made was simple but dangerous. The Dawn's promise would pose as a damaged merchant vessel. When the convoy stopped to investigate, they would strike fast, free the prisoners, take the supplies, and scatter before Imperial reinforcements arrived. 2 days later, they were in position in the Nexus system. Nari sat at the navigation console, her hand resting on the modified crystal interface Jiwan had built. Through it, she could feel the approach of the convoy ships. 5 vessels, she reported. 3 cargo ships and 2 escorts. The escorts are light cruisers, not heavy warships. "Any sign they suspect a trap?" Minho asked. "No. They're following standard patrol patterns." On the screen, Hyun activated their distress beacon. The message was simple. Engine failure. Life support failing. Requesting immediate assistance. It was the same cry for help that had brought the humans to Nari's escape pod 8 months ago. The irony was not lost on her. The convoy altered course toward them. Standard Imperial protocol required all ships to investigate distress calls even from unknown vessels. It was one of the few decent laws the Empire still followed. "Incoming transmission," Sora announced. The voice that came through was sharp and official. "Unknown vessel. This is Captain Yunji of the Imperial Escort Fleet. State your emergency." Minho keyed the communicator. "Captain, this is the merchant vessel Lucky Break. We've suffered engine failure and have injured crew aboard. Can you assist?" "Stand by for boarding and inspection." Nari's heart pounded as the escort ship approached. Everything depended on the next few minutes. If the Imperial captain became suspicious, if she recognized any of the former slaves on board, the rescue mission would become a death trap. The airlock cycled and Captain Yunji stepped aboard with 2 guards. She was a typical Veltharian officer, tall, pale, with the cold crystal blue eyes of someone who had never questioned orders. "Where is your captain?" she demanded. "Right here," Minho said, stepping forward. "Thank you for responding so quickly." Yunji looked him up and down with obvious distaste. "Human. I should have expected as much. Your species has no proper maintenance protocols. We do our best with what we have. Show me your cargo manifest and crew records." This was the critical moment. The fake documents Jiwan had created would not stand up to detailed inspection, but they only needed to fool the captain for a few minutes. While Yunji examined the forged papers, Nari moved quietly through the ship. Her crystal implant let her sense the locations of all the Imperial crew members. The captain had brought only 2 guards, leaving the rest on her ship. It was a mistake born of arrogance. The Empire was so used to being feared that they rarely took proper precautions. Nari reached the ship's communication array and connected her implant to the control system. Through the crystal interface, she could feel the electronic pathways like rivers of light. One by one, she began shutting down communication links. Back in the main corridor, Captain Yunji was growing suspicious. "These documents show cargo that is not typical for human merchants." "We carry whatever pays well," Minho replied. "Business is business." "Indeed. And what business brings you to this particular system?" Before Minho could answer, the lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a second later, but in that brief moment of darkness, everything changed. Jin and Kira moved with the speed of trained fighters, disarming the guards before they could react. Day's people had taught him stealth techniques that worked even against Veltharian senses. Captain Yunji found herself surrounded before she realized what was happening. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded. "Liberation," Nari said, stepping out of the shadows. "Something your empire has forgotten the meaning of." Yunji's eyes widened as she recognized the crystal patterns on Nari's skin. You're the exile, the one Admiral Taiyang has been hunting." "I prefer to think of myself as free." The rescue operation went smoothly after that. The cargo ships were full of food, medicine, and tools that were desperately needed by the hidden colonies. But more importantly, they were also carrying prisoners being transported to new work sites. 47 beings of 6 different species were freed that day. Some chose to join the growing rebellion. Others asked to be taken to safe worlds where they could rebuild their lives. As the Dawn's Promise prepared to leave the Nexus system, Nari found herself back in the observation deck where she had once talked with Hyun about the stars. But now she was not alone. Minho stood beside her, looking out at the endless field of light. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Saving me, that day?" "Everything that's happened since?" "Never," he said without hesitation. "You've shown us something we never knew existed, a fight worth fighting. The Empire will never stop hunting us. You know that, right? This won't end until one of us is destroyed. Then we'd better make sure it's not us." Nari smiled. In the reflection of the window, she could see the activity behind them. Former slaves working alongside human crew members. Different species learning to trust each other. Children who had never known freedom playing games in the corridors. It was chaotic and messy and imperfect. Nothing like the ordered crystal cities of her birth world. It was home. "Minho," she said. "Thank you." "For what?" "For showing me what family really means. For teaching me that home isn't a place. It's the people who choose to stay with you." He put his arm around her shoulders in the human gesture of affection she had learned to treasure. "Welcome home, Nari." Outside, the window, the stars shone with the promise of new worlds to explore, new people to meet, new families to build. The Veltharian Empire was vast and powerful, but it had one fatal weakness that would eventually destroy it. It had never learned that love was stronger than fear. And love, as humans had discovered long ago, could move mountains. Or in this case, topple empires. The rebellion had begun with 1 exile and 4 humans in a salvage ship. Now it was growing into something that would change the galaxy forever. Nari looked at the stars and smiled. She had been banished to die among them. Instead, she had found life.